Great. Hey, y'all, it's Liv. Thanks so much for being here. I'm here and joined very, very, very happy. We finally were able to do this. I'm here with Gentle Rambler. Thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Good afternoon. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I was just I caught a snowstorm yesterday, but I'm happy to be on your show. I watched some of your shows and I enjoy it. I actually watched you on a program with another. You were on like a guest appearance on a show I watched, and I dig everything you stand for and everything. So
thank you. Thank you.
I do a podcast weekly, and I have a few good, really interesting guests coming up in the next few weeks. And I also write for a site called Dangerous Globe out of the Netherlands, which people can go on there and see my writing as well.
And so how can people find you and these writings? How can we get you there?
Well, actually, you could. There's a link on my Twitter my Twitter profile, dangerousglobe.com. If you just put dangerousglobe.com up in your the Google machine, it'll come up, and then you can see Robert Diblasio. I use my my name there, so you could they can read my. But there's also other good pieces on there by several different writers. It's very interesting. It's an independent site, but they cover basically everything that I talk about. So.
Mm-hmm. And what's your Twitter? I'll put it in the comments right now.
At Diblasio Robert.
Diblasio Robert. Okay. Put it in the chat. Awesome. So we're here to talk about mental health and the opioid crisis. And yes. You said you just said you could talk about this all day. I think you said before this is a really personal topics for you. So I would love to just dive right in. Okay. Just give your background on these topics and what they mean to you.
Okay. Well, actually, I did one show focusing on mental health. November was Mental Health Awareness Month. I was diagnosed with bipolar 2 probably in my late teens. And so, I always try to, I sympathize with anybody out there who suffers through a mental health. I think it should be more widely discussed. Figuring something out like that and being able to come on like a program and talk about it, it's not really easy. I mean, I could talk about it all day because, it's something that I understand, and I've done a lot of, personal experience as well as research, but it's hard to kind of open up to people. So that's why I kind of waited until, I developed like a listening base where I could kind of become a little more personal, like, personal experiences. But, and the opioid crisis thing, I've been dealing with that for over 15 years now. I brought it up on my last podcast. It's before COVID. That was like the national health emergency that was happening in the United States.
Yeah.
And since low grade, high grade fentanyl hit the streets probably about 5 or 6 years ago, people have been dying at alarming rates. I gave some statistics on my last podcast. I remember a few of them, but they've been keeping like statistics for the last 20 years, and they've reached 1 million, cases of overdose deaths. And that's not counting folks on the street that they're just, they pass away and nobody, lost souls or whatever. So it's very personal for me. I was actually a intravenous heroin user, and it's really hard for me to be honest about that, but one of the best things is to be honest when you're in recovery and all that. So that's really important, at least in the beginning stages, as they say. I mean, I didn't do the whole 10-12 step thing, but it is good. I think that works for anybody out there who has trouble with alcohol, even gambling or drug addiction. 12 steps does work, statistically speaking. Some people, could do it on their own, but it's always good because, NA, never alone, all that thing. I'm not going to come here and be like a proponent of Narcotics Anonymous, but it's something that can help. And you could go on and see the statistics of all the sorry, I got a little bit of a cold, but all the statistics of the deaths, people hospitalized, and it's really because it's a societal thing. It's something that is affecting just regular people of all walks of life, though, rich people, poor people, and it destroys families. And it's something that with COVID it kind of got pushed aside, but it's still something that it knows no ages. I was in a facility with kids 18 years old, that were doing it since they were 13. And that was mind boggling. And these are like kids from like northern, say Bergen County, like rich places. So it doesn't matter, what walk of life. I'm more from a lower middle class neighborhood, but it doesn't matter what, your, economic, what your economic status is. Doesn't matter color, race, creed, anything. So
Yep.
basically, it's my little introduction on that.
Thank you. Now, where would you like to start? The mental health aspect. Well, they're very connected, and we're going to get to the connection between the mental health and the opioid crisis. But where would you like to start with your experiences with either one?
I could start with the opioid crisis, because on my last episode, I touched on it a bit. I didn't really give too many real war stories, as they say, but I was in a very difficult place at that time. I would say about 5 years ago. It was I was not on the streets per se, and I always kind of kept a roof over my head and made sure that I was employed, but I was more or less what you call a functioning addict, and which is extremely difficult to do. Yeah. I mean, I wound up in they always say jails, institutions, and death are the three final things that'll happen if you continue using, especially heavy drugs like heroin. I mean, I started with the marijuana, early age, late teens, alcohol and everything. You just keep going to the common denominator until you find the one that really puts you in a place you want to be. But you have to find. I could talk about war stories. I don't know. I mean, are you interested in that sort of thing?
I am. I'm. Whatever you're comfortable with. This is a safe space, so it's you're.
I got into things. I would rob at gunpoint. Because I live in an area that's it's a high crime area, whatever you want to call it. And and then now I kind of just look the other way. But at a time, I put myself in very dangerous situations just to. Not only the physical withdrawals, but it becomes an obsession, and and then quitting it, not getting getting off of it, because I like to try to sometimes focus on the positives of stopping, because even when I'm not sure a lot of folks out there know there's physical withdrawals that you have to go through, but after you get through with that, there's the whole mental aspect of it and changing your behaviors. And, cat's pulling at me here, dealing with your behaviors, changing a lot of things about, taking different routes to get home, stuff like that, people maybe in suburbia, quote, might not have to deal with. But they say there was a program they had on HBO a while back. There's a corner everywhere, meaning that, if you have that, disease, quote, disease, you will find it, and a lot of people did it through prescription means. Now, that's what I wanted to get to, actually, is where a lot of people started that, I was from, like I said, a neighborhood where one 15-minute bus ride, you knew what was there, if you go to this area, that's what's going to, what's going on there. But as for people that maybe went to had a medical issue and, got an opioid prescription for 6 months, and then they took them off. And a lot of people actually got addicted that way. And I've had an argument, not an argument, a debate with a woman on the social media about, because she suffers from chronic pain. And now people that suffer from chronic pain, whether it be, cancer or sciatica, whatever it is, they're having trouble getting prescriptions because because of the opioid crisis. So doctors are less inclined to write prescriptions for people. So I had tweeted something out about it, and she kind of came at me a bit, and we were going back and forth. But I mean, I can't argue with somebody who suffers from chronic pain, and they're giving them Tylenol 3s for something as serious as pancreatic cancer. So that's a difficult conundrum there with that. But she was kind of blaming it on the wrong. I'm not a proponent of the pharmaceutical industry. If you ever heard my show, I always call them out very very often, because I think they're all just after the bottom line, and all they care about is money. Even with the COVID thing. So I kind of blame it on them. And then the doctors, they see dollar signs, and certain states, they had no laws against a certain amount of prescriptions you could get. So, the pill mills up the I-95 corridor, it got out of control in the late 2000s, and people got hooked. And then when all the doctors stopped writing and all the pill mills closed down, they were left out on the street. I mean, you could watch documentaries on YouTube and everything else that, really heavy documentaries. There's a city, Dayton, Ohio, and I forget the year, but they had 340 some odd deaths from, recorded deaths, and of a city of like 180,000 people. So you figure that's one death a day from opioids in a city that, is smaller than the town I live in. So, it's a serious thing. And me personally, working, actually, doing the podcast, focusing on my creative outlets, because I meshed the two when I was younger. I tried to think that, you look at like some poets from the 18th century and opium, opium brings a creative, juices flowing. I think that's all a bunch of bullshit, to be honest with you. But I believed it. I believed at a time that, that it would spur creativity. And then I would like the two kind of interlocked. And then I became like, I couldn't play music. I couldn't really write without it. And then I learned as I spent some time in, in the county jail or whatever. But that helped because that was like where you were in a place where you cannot obtain that. You're in a place where you can't. It's not like a detox where you can just up and leave. When you're locked up, you're locked up. They're not letting you out. So that's how I got through a lot of the original like symptoms of getting through it. But I don't have a solution for the opioid crisis. I don't have it. I don't think anybody does really. Because of, like I mentioned, with people with chronic health issues, I don't really have a solution for that. It's just education's important, especially parents with their children. I didn't really talk. I was a single mother and everything, but we didn't talk about that. They had DARE, but DARE, we looked at it as something silly. Like when you're in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and they bring a DARE people to. And it didn't work. It was a big waste of money. But education is important, and maybe if they go about it in different ways, then bringing the DARE rabbit or whatever the heck they did back then, it was stupid, and nobody really paid any attention to it. So I think I could talk to my children about it, as they get old enough to understand it. But that's important. Anybody watching who has children who are, it's a scary world out there these days. Like I said, I was in rehab with very young, teenagers that started at a very young age. So it's not like when I was younger where like, you get a little joint on the side in high school. It got serious. And I don't know when it happened, but it did. It did.
Yeah. And since COVID, it's only gotten worse between like the actual using of, the deaths, the overdose deaths, suicides. Everything that was already there before COVID that we already knew about has just gotten exponentially worse. Everything we could talk about, the housing crisis, the homelessness epidemic.
Oh, yeah, it all comes out.
All of these things have just been amplified by COVID. And I think because it's been amplified, it's so hard to miss now. It's waking a lot of people up. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I interlocked COVID and the opioid crisis in the most recent article I wrote, but I was more coming at the role that pharmaceutical companies play in it.
Big pharma, yeah.
I'm not an anti-vaxxer by any means, but I'm suspicious of certain ways the vaccines were brought up. Just I don't cross into COVID territory, but the way the vaccines, like I was vaccinated twice, and then they're sending me all these things. I mean, how many times are boosters? It's important, the vaccinations. You have to, they have to keep trying to make them better and everything, because that's how you eradicate polio and all those other things. But I mean, because, when you have a public health emergency like that, people are going to look more into, other public health things like the opioid crisis. And that's why I think sometimes they can be discussed in an open forum, one and the other, because, it's basically something that could cause a real problem. Everybody's worried about, world wars and all this. Glad to finally be here. Xavier from VA. Hello.
Hi, Xavier.
I had this. Yeah, I like that when the things come up. But people are taking more. They're taking more notice of like, not just like worrying about wars, like, because wars are obviously. But like the big scare in the 80s. I mean, I was a kid, but the big scare was like nuclear war and everything else. And now people know that a pandemic, a public health thing like a drug crisis, that's going to possibly the thing that wipes out. And also climate. Climate's another thing that it's danger. It's something that could really cause the planet to basically the big issue with like the population of the planet. So, I mean, those are the two, COVID and climate are two of the most important, I think, issues that need to be focused on. So, they're getting off on other things, but, you see a defense budget at $740 billion, and they're fighting over $2 or $3 billion for, stuff to keep lead water out of pipes in the Bronx. And it's like, well, you can put the money for missiles and F-35s, but you can't, put a few extra bills in the pocket of, at-risk, neighborhoods that kids are drinking lead water. So, I think that's more important. What do you, No,
there's always seems to be money for the military and cops. There always seems to be money. Always seems to be endless amounts of our money that is being directed by our failures in office to the Pentagon, to wars, to the cops, militarizing the cops. And meanwhile, we still, we're in a pandemic and we still can't even get healthcare. And I just don't know how that can't wake you up. Like, it was, I definitely, I'm from like suburbia, white privilege bubble. And so it was easy growing up to just be so isolated from the world because you're just in this little bubble. That's promoted also by watching certain news outlets or getting your news from corporate stream media, and that's facilitating these lies or this propaganda and the fears that you need to stay in this bubble, and that your bubble is safe and that you're good where you are. And then going to college, growing up, going to college was a really big thing. And Trump getting elected was like a thing where I was like, what is going on right now?
That was a biggie.
Yeah. And because for me as a kid, like I grew up in the golden years of Obama. So but I've always questioned the system. So I never was always like, oh my God, yes, Obama. But like, I did think, like, oh, that was history. Like that was a big step forward. And then to get Trump was a huge step back. And then to learn, because I was really young when Bush and Nader happened. That was 2000. I was like 4. When that happened basically again with Hillary and Trump in 2016, I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, what is to learn? Like, I had to educate myself again, because I did not learn about that as I did in school because of whitewashing of history. But learn about the Electoral College and what it is and that it's based in slavery, and to learn about that system. And then it was just a downward spiral from there. I kept learning more about history, and educating myself, and seeing all the connections. I was just talking about this with CJ on Straight Out of Politics on Wednesday. Just like all roads led back to slavery. And like, especially when I learned that about the cops, that they are based on runaway slave patrols, I was like, how is there any reforming a systemically racist and violent system like that? There is that when it's based upon that. Hello, we have so many people joining us. We have more people joining us. Hi, Mateo.
Hey, man.
New friend. Hi, Kelly.
Kelly girl. I think she's a local friend of mine. Hey, Kelly.
Oh, awesome. To see, I kind of lost it. But to see all these things like just getting worse and worse. And our public health official or our public officials just like still, like we've said, giving money to the Pentagon, giving money to wars, giving money to cops. It's really frustrating. There's like, again, when I talked with CJ, it's like when you see that, like there's no like money to Israel. That's not on the ballot. So there's no voting our way out of this.
Yeah. And that's only I was on the Civil Disobedience show. That's only the money they tell us about. We don't know what the CIA's budget is.
Yep.
You mentioned education, but educating yourself it was important because when I went to school, see, when Bush was going on, I feel like we're at the end of times. Yeah. when I was in school, Bush was around, the war was starting, and I was in my,
Yep.
I was like a mid-teens, and what they taught us I mean, I went to a public school, very low funded public school, but they taught us about like Washington crossing the Delaware, Lincoln freeing the slaves, maybe a little World War II, and then like, the freaking shuttle exploding. They didn't really, there was no like liberal arts or political science classes. So a lot of things that I had a very brilliant uncle who helped raise me, who taught me a lot about history and how the government works. So as a pretty young age, I was taught to kind of think outside the box. But it's difficult when you go to a public school and all you're worried about is just kind of passing and getting to the next grade, and you're not really focusing on what they're teaching you. But what they're teaching you is a bunch of bullshit anyways. Pardon my language. But it's good that you did the intellectual thinking on your own, and that helps me a lot because the more I think about, or the more I started focusing. I don't know if you remember Charlottesville. Remember Charlottesville?
Yes.
Where the people were going around chanting all those crazy things.
Yes.
Like with torches. That was a big thing for me because at that time I was still really, creative things. I was like more, not a fictional kind of guy. I was trying to write. I still got like a novel I'm working on, all that type of stuff. But when that stuff like that happened, you say Trump got elected and there were never-ending wars. I decided, you know what? I put my talents or perceived talents for something, towards politics is something that's going to affect, the everyday person, affect me. And you mentioned so many things, and I totally dig that. Everything you said about where our tax money goes and everything to fund police for basically beating up minorities all day. Like I don't want my taxes to go that way. And actually, a friend of mine who I was on her podcast, Manic Pixie Weirdo podcast, she actually mentioned a cool thing about like. It would be cool if like we could decide where our taxes were going. Like if we had like a sheet or like checklists, like where you want your tax to go, education, or you want them to go to uniforms for the New Jersey State Police, who are a well-known, white supremacist group. Honestly, any state police people out there, New Jersey State Police are run by white supremacists, and their uniforms actually are based on SS Rwanda task force in the 1930s. So I mean, there you go. That's something I learned on my own. They won't tell you that in school in New Jersey, that the NJ State Police uniforms are based on the SS. And it's true. You can look it up on the Google box.
Wow. And it's like once you start, like all these things start clicking, like after you're like, wow. And you just start noticing them and you can't stop. And it's good, but it's also, it's scary to realize that and be like, this is what it's based on. Like, this is the reality. This is like, no wonder we're seeing the problems we're seeing because this is what it's based on.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, you brought up another point. I was trying to see if we had any other comments. But I'm sorry. Let's go back. What are some of the other things you talked about? Please remind me.
Well, the educating yourself.
Educating yourself.
And also, oh boy, so like you educate yourself, but then you start to like you do a weekly podcast. That's why I chose the title Beneath the Surface, because we're going to be talking about stuff that mainstream. That's what I go for anyway, is to talk about stuff that mainstream outlets maybe might not touch on, like when the whole bombings in Palestine were going on. I was really hitting that hard because I have a lot of folks who I correspond with that live in Gaza City, that folks from England that are of Palestinian descent. So that really hit me hard. I have an Algerian uncle, so stuff like that. And like when the bombings were happening, they would show you like a clip of like Israel bombing a freaking condo, but they wouldn't tell you why. They wouldn't tell you, Hamas is there, and basically anybody who's sitting having their dinner watching this, they're going to believe Scott Pelley or whoever's telling them that, because there's somebody, they put guys up there that handsome guys that you feel like you can trust with your news, but it's really watered down news. And I actually, what I try to do when I have a guest, I mean, I'm not like I'm not an expert in anything, but when I have a topic, like I had a really brilliant guy named Malik. I told him to watch this, but I don't know if he will. But he's from England and he does studies in. Get off. We can just chat, right? So he was talking about, we were talking about the colonization of Africa. Another thing they'll never teach you about in school. You brought up the slavery thing, and he was really. I learned a lot from him, and he's a young kid, in his early 20s, and but he's going to college for this, and he taught me a lot of things about 1492, because when they taught us about 1492, Columbus came and discovered America. But if you look at that year, that was a big year for colonization. Portuguese going down to Africa, colonizing, giant countries, drawing up different, because those borders in Africa, if you ever look at them, they're like perfectly symmetrical. A lot of them. A lot of them are just squares and rectangles.
Yeah.
So obviously somebody's drawing up those borders. You got a Belgium representative and a German guy saying, okay, you're going to take this part, and then we're going to draw a line, and we're going to, there's no natural boundaries like there. It's not like there's a river where you can say, okay, we're going to separate the states here. So he taught me a lot about that. And that's what I like to do. I like to have people on the show that I can talk about things, that they're like, that they're into, like, they're more knowledgeable on. But yeah, I mean, that whole tax thing, I think that's a great idea. What do you think? I think
that's what I was going to say. Thank you that you just reminded me. That is what I envision post-revolution of what we have is a direct democracy where we get to say exactly where it goes to the people. A ballot goes to the people, probably phones and paper, because we can do, why not? We need to be as accessible as possible. Except it doesn't have to be paper, because we can be better than that in 2022. We can be more green.
We're the technology.
But, we can have ballots in a direct democracy going to the people saying, what do you want the budget to be? Where do you want this your tax money to go? If we're even doing money still, like if we're not just all like bartering and trading already, but if we're doing still, socialism and our transition, I think that, still having that direct democracy where we can be able to have the people very engaged in where everything is going and how everything is looking. That is what I would like post-revolution. That's what I'm fighting for. And I forget there's already countries that are doing this, that have more of a direct democracy. I want to say Denmark. I want to say like some countries in the Netherlands. But that's that to me, that's what the best thing, because we have a representative democracy and that's clearly failed. And I think it's very corruptible. That's why I'm also very I don't like unions very much anymore, especially after what I learned.
Yeah, I was in a union. So.
What was it?
I was in a union, so
See, I'm more worker co-op now. I think I'm more pro worker co-op because, again, I feel like unions are very corruptible, and as they have been and as they are. Yeah. I'm still educating myself about that. But I think being as direct to the people as possible is the way forward, and to let them actually care about where their money's going, because I do think that's the problem. A lot of people don't know that their monies are going to, they were going to Afghanistan. They're going to other illegal wars that we're doing, in drone strikes and other bombings, funding Israel to bomb Gaza and Palestine and do ethnic cleansing and genocide. We're funding that. And that's not just the money. That's not Jeff Bezos' money. That's not Bill Gates or Elon Musk. That's our money. That's the average person's money.
Yes.
That's the worker's money.
Right.
And
my taxes going there.
Yeah. So we need to say, we need to start having more of a say of where our money is going. And we need to tell people where their money is going in the first place to get that change to happen.
We have to get them to listen to us.
Yeah.
Because we're sliding towards an oligarchy,
We're in it. We are in it. I heard a communist friend tweet something about how they were having a conversation with some stranger they were helping in a grocery parking lot. And they were like, I'm more worried about, because this random person said they're really worried about America becoming communist. And they said, they said, this communist comrade said, well, actually, I'm really worried about it becoming more like authoritarianism, because we're more like 1930s Germany right now. Yeah. And that really sunk in with me, because I was like, damn, that's really scary. That really is feeling like history repeating itself all these wrongs happening right now.
Yeah.
Especially,
Go ahead.
sorry, you go.
Oh, well, even like you see the storming of the Capitol.
Yeah, I was just thinking that
now
with the 1-year anniversary.
Those folks are screwed up individuals, but obviously they're angry too about something.
Yep.
Whether or not it was just because they like Donald Trump because he's racist, and it brought that out in them, but it's not just the. I never want to make any like I don't know what's going on inside their heads, those people, but they're obviously getting pissed off about something too. So go through, and those are like you're like real patriotic Americans usually, and they're breaking windows in the Capitol building. So I mean, I think more or less, like you said, the revolution, quote, the revolution, it's going to be the quote, 99%. At some point we're going to have to band together against the machine of the billionaires that are running things and controlling the government. Like you said, that's not Jeff Bezos's money. That's not Elon Musk's money. And it's true. It's taxpayer money. But those guys are the ones that basically have all the control. Now, this SpaceX thing with Elon Musk, a friend of mine, Chris Richards on the Civil Disobedience Show and Kennedy, they explained to me that, he's just not, those rockets aren't just to go fly up to the moon and put hotels up there. He's building rockets and probably selling them to the military. And that's how, secretly selling rockets. You don't think that they want that type of, that type of technology? They want that. They want that technology. So, but I mean, honestly, I think it's going to take I wish we were lucky enough to be in the end of times. Oh, don't worry. The way things are going, we're getting there. Maybe the end.
I think we are.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. I mean, it's reality. That's a very real statement. And we could smile and laugh about it, but I don't know. I don't know if you have children. I have 2 young children, and I worry for what they're gonna face when they're my age, or when they get into like high school age. Like, will there the environment, and obviously we're talking about how the government is. I mean, Joe Biden is a puppet, man. He's a total puppet. That's all he is. And if all the Democrats are ever going to allow to get elected, if they continue this type of campaign, Bernie Sanders, I liked him, but once he said the S word, you know what the S word is, right? Socialism. Once he mentioned being a socialist, that was it for him, man.
But he's also a sellout. He's sold out.
They all do. Yeah.
That's why I have no respect for him anymore. Like, people are like, oh, but he helped like open up so many people. I'm like, he really did I think he's done a lot more damage now to this movement.
Yeah, he you know what it is? He got very close to getting to that threshold where he could have been elected. So
got a lot of money.
Yeah, and the DNC basically because when he ran against Hillary, he was still pretty in his radical sort of, he'd still come out some of his beliefs, and he almost won, and he figured, if I'm going to win, I'm going to have to basically sell out like everybody else does.
Yeah.
And Trump isn't really a puppet. He's a tyrant. He's like a capitalist tyrant. And so, I mean, that's why I think you had all those crazy folks show up, because he spoke to like that base of, but then, the billionaire tax cuts, people forget about that. That's why he gets so many votes. It's not just the racist, crazy people. It's, the rich people that they've been voting for Republicans for years now because they get tax breaks and everything else. So I don't know what's going to happen on the next presidential election. I can't even think that far ahead.
If we even make it there, right? Like, you're right. You just said I can't even think that far ahead.
Any day now, the world can break apart. I mean, climate, COVID, anything else that, society's in a lot of trouble. And I like technology aspect of podcasts and us being able to meet over, social media and talk about this. And maybe some people who tune in can relay, or they can think upon this subject, and then they could bring out a conversation in another forum, and more people can be tuned into what we're talking about here. Because we started off with the opioid crisis and the mental health aspect, but when I get when I get on one of these like interviews, I can't help but start talking about the whole political spectrum and how everything is going to pieces. And it's a personal thing for me, opioid crisis and mental health, which is very personal, and I look at it personally. I have to go inside myself and come out and speak on it. So it was hard. It's hard sometimes to speak too graphically about it. But when we start talking about budget stuff and about all the the screwed up in the government, that's when I get like excited to talk about stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's serious. It's serious. I giggle, but it's serious. Everything.
Yeah.
Is very it's a dangerous place out there in the world right now, and stuff like opioid crisis just adds to it because it numbs society. I was numbed to anything that was going on around me from the age of maybe 22 to 32, let's say. And when I was heavily into my addiction, I was numbed, and the country likes that. That's why I was wondering, like, when I would go to like a detox, I said, why are they being so nice to me here? Like, and now I realize that because in the grand scheme of the machine, they want people to be overly medicated. They want you to be in a medicated state, nodding off, because then you're not thinking. You're not thinking about what the hell is going on out there, and they like that. They like that. They realize that's a weapon that they can use. They can use to numb our brain cells to the fact that if you get something real heavy and you sit in a chair for 3 hours, with your eyes closed, you're not thinking about what's going on up in Washington or what's going on outside with homeless people. Where I live, there's a really bad homeless crisis going on. You're not going to think about that. You're going to think about your next fixation. You're going to think about that. You're not going to think about Joe Biden screwing something up or Palestine getting bombed. You're not going to think about that. That's my opinion on that, and that's why one of the reasons why I was like, what, I got to stop because I'm wasting any independent thought. Supposed talent that you have. I was wasting it. I was throwing it away, in an opium haze, and it wasn't cool. It was never cool.
Mm-hmm. Do you mind talking more about that, about your addiction and then recovery and what's that?
But I'm a little more comfortable, sure. I mentioned why, what's something that clicked inside me, and I still have cravings. I still have I'm like in a treatment environment right now. So, I'm still, people go, there's actually a statistic that the average is seven like real attempts at sobriety before you really get it right. Like that's the average. I don't know where they come up with these averages, but a treatment person told me that's like, because I was like, I can't get this, I'm not getting it. I can't. And they're like, well, the average is 7 attempts, real attempts, not just like, I ran out of cash and it's cold out. I'm going to go, sit in the hospital for 3 days. Like really trying, like coming deep inside yourself and realizing that you have a problem. And that's something that it took me a while to do. People have pride issues. I've had friends pass away that, the pride gets in the way. You don't want to admit that you have a fault, like such a serious fault where you can't control an addiction. People don't want to admit to that. It's like you're admitting defeat, basically. And I mean that wasn't really the big thing for me, but for some people it is. That won't even attempt treatment because they feel like they're surrendering, basically.
Mm-hmm.
People that have a lot of they feel like they can control their lives and use, and it's really not possible. I tried every which way. And you look at famous people, you look at Kurt Cobain, Jimi Hendrix, all these people, they had the world in the palm of their hands and they were still sitting in a $25 a night motel room shooting heroin. So it didn't matter. Money doesn't solve that. Money makes it worse. The more money you have, the more access you're going to have. So that's why it's so difficult to stop for a lot of people, because it doesn't mean you might be able to go to a nicer facility, but that's just, you go to a nicer facility and you're like, oh, this is like a vacation for me. I'm glad that I went into like a jail environment, and I'm glad that I had to suffer through a lot of pain, physical pain, whatever, spiritual pain. I'm glad that I went through that, because then, when the next time you want to hit, you're going to think, you're going to think heavily about this. Like, remember where I was 2-3 years ago, not sleeping for weeks. It's a bit of a downer, I know, but this is like the reality of that situation. Anybody who is dabbling in that, or is in that age where you might be experimenting, that is really, you shouldn't go past anything as like marijuana is, medically known to be like helpful in a lot of ways. You don't want to go past that, because then, the drug grabs you and it doesn't let go for a very long time, And I wasted a lot of years doing what I said earlier, sitting in a chair, closing my eyes and not thinking, because escape reality, but it wasn't even that originally. Like I said, it spurred creativity because I'm a creative guy. Actually, my wife, I wanted to show you guys anything, but I don't know if I would. My wife and my brother-in-law, they paint. I'm not much of a painter. I don't know if you could see that, but yeah, I was always into, the creative aspect of it. Like I could spur creativity, and that's where I got stuck on. But some people, they might be facing like a something interpersonal that happened to them, when they were a child, whatever the case may be, and they're trying to, they're using that as self-medication, and that's where the mental health aspect comes into it, because I figured out I didn't want to admit that. That was a big thing for me, was admitting the mental health thing. Yeah, that I, social anxiety, all that stuff. Yeah. I didn't want to admit to that. And then I realized that, wow, that could be replacing, the drug is replacing, well, not replacing, but it's self-medicating is a simple way of putting it. And I had to come to terms with that was the main reason why I was using, not because, it made me a better musician or whatever. It was really to self-medicate for, pre-existing mental issues I have or still have, but I'm dealing with. And, doing the podcasting, it actually helps. It really does, because, and obviously having a gainful employment and, just keeping yourself occupied is important. As they say, the idle mind is the devil's playground, some kind of saying. You know what I'm saying? It's something like that. I don't know if I got it right, but yeah. So that's a really, I'm glad that we were able to talk about that subject, because I touched on it a few minutes in my last show, but I want to talk like Ghislaine Maxwell, stuff like that. Because I like to go in all different. I'd like to try to fit 3 or 4 different issues in like 30 minutes. So I didn't really talk too much about a lot of interpersonal things, but I'm glad I was able to, because it's therapeutic for me, and I hope people that listen will sort of get something out of it. I hope so. I hope it helps someone that may be having the same issues as me. I had a few listeners that I have that messaged me privately and said, I this for in the 1980s I did this or whatever, and basically telling me in a private setting that they had a similar problem and they overcame it, and they appreciated that I was honest about it. Because it's hard to come out and say something that's that's really damaging. Everything, you want to come off as that everything, you're a positive person, you're healthy, all that. And when you have to talk about something like that, but like I said, it's therapeutic, and if it helps somebody, it's important.
Yeah. I agree that, at least on a personal level, that's been very therapeutic for myself as well, is talking about it in spaces, just even like on these platforms, talking about it more openly and honestly, has been really therapeutic and helpful for my healing process, my recovery. Something you said earlier about being a functional addict, I wanted to touch on that again, because I've always thought of that as like such an oxymoron. Do you want to talk about more of that, like what that means for you? How's that differ than maybe what you'd say, like what looks like full-blown addiction?
Yeah. Well, I was both, so I can talk on that.
Thank you. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. Functioning addict. I mean, like as a functioning addict, I was still able to hold a job. I was still able to keep a roof over my head. I was still able to, I'd wear long sleeves when it was 100 degrees out, stuff like that, where, somebody who's in the know would notice something, but, basically keeping it secretive, trying to, but you run into problems where, I don't know, something happens at work and you miss a few days, and then you have like, you're going to pay rent, or you're going to make yourself better physically, where, you don't feel sick. I mean, the withdrawal symptoms, I could explain, the withdrawal symptoms, but it's a terrible thing. So that's where it got to the place. And then, you say, oh, I'll lose this job and I'll get the next one. And I went through that for a long time. And then I thought, because, It's because I had writing and playing music. You get into that space where you're like, okay, at least I'm like, at least I'm doing something artistic, and maybe someday I could do it, professionally, whatever. That doesn't work out, and then you're bummed out about that. And eventually, I became a dysfunctional addict. It took several years to happen. Probably when I became an intravenous user is probably when it really basically came to the point where it's very difficult to have that, because that's like the final straw in anybody's path through drug abuse and addiction is that, that's really the last straw. So once I got too in deep into that, I basically became a dysfunctioning addict, meaning came across money any which way I could, lived with people who would just let me kind of crash, in a spot where I didn't have to consistently pay rent to like a landlord, not talk to my parents for years, not talk to my family for years. So I was in that spot as well. And there really is no different. It's really no different chemically speaking, emotionally speaking. Is no difference. The only difference is that you're putting on a mask 6 to 8 hours a day. When you go out into the world, you're putting on a mask. You're covering up your addiction. I mean, how people, I mean, it's kind of, I don't know if people like overeaters to hide that, people that are gambling addicts, there's a lot of different things that people are addicted to, but I would say that is a really hard one to be a functioning addict. I mean, you could buy like an 8-ball of cocaine on the weekends and, finish it off on Sunday and go back to work Monday. I'm not recommending that, but that's more or less what I would call myself more of like a functioning. Yeah, I wasn't necessarily a habitual user yet, but I was still using enough to where, that's where the bulk of my, money was going to and everything else. So functioning addicts, eventually you will get to the point where you need help. I think it's undefeated. It's undefeated. Mm-hmm. The drug is undefeated at this point. I don't know anybody I brought up, famous people. That Philip Seymour Hoffman. I was just reading up on him. He was a functioning addict. I didn't even know that guy had a problem, and the next thing you know, he was passed away in a hotel room. So I mean, functioning addicts, people that are millionaires are functioning addicts, and they still usually end up jails, institutions, or death. It's just those are the three. That's one thing that there's like cliches when you go to treatment and NA, but that's true. That's a true thing. Mm-hmm. Dr. Bob, whatever his name was, that wrote that AA book, that is a true thing. Those are the final three places that you're going to end up if you continue using drugs or alcohol, anything that's an addictive substance for you. That's gonna, it's gonna cause your eventual downfall, basically. Mm-hmm. So I was both. I was in the Teamsters, At that time, I was kind of on a different kind of. He's close to boxing, so at that point, I was that was one of my parts where I was kind of doing better. I was substituting more or less, but I wasn't using heavily. I wasn't going out and running the streets, so I was doing better at that time in my life. But then, like you mentioned, like unions, I had a thing with the union that. They lost some of their contracts or whatever. So they just lay you off because you don't have any seniority. So that's what happened to me. And so once that happened, I figured, hey, why keep myself clean when, I did all this work and then they just can drop you like that. So, but you're just hurting yourself in the end. You're just hurting yourself.
Yeah. And we have this comment I thought would be good to discuss. Okay. Hi, Sula. Thanks for joining us. Both of my brothers were functional addicts until one overdosed and the other one was forced to quit drinking because of cancer, but now on opioids. I was on opioids for over 20 years, been clean for years. Good for you, Sula.
Fantastic.
Solidarity. Yeah. So, and Sula, please comment to this question. But what really sparked your road to recovery?
Yeah, we're waiting for. Sorry, I got a little bit of. Yeah, I'm back. Okay.
You good? Okay.
Sula, if you could respond to that was a really heavy statement you made. I'd like to hear, how you're doing more, because it's always good to have people chime in with their thoughts. because that's really helps the conversation.
Yeah.
That's a very traumatic thing to lose a brother, and I'm sure losing a sibling is very difficult. I'm sure I've lost a lot of friends or several friends to it, and yeah, it was a wake up call. Guys in their 30s, 30, 33. My one friend was who passed away, and it's very difficult. And I know alcohol is probably the most dangerous one to quit. When you talk about the physical withdrawals for
Wow.
a daily alcohol inducing alcohol every day for years. When I was in treatment, that was the most difficult one. Viewing the alcoholic trying to get stop drinking, that seemed to be the most dangerous one, like for your basic physical health. So I wish for your brother the best, Sula, and I wish you the best too. I really hope you stick with the sobriety. I'm doing my best, and I hope you do your best, because that's inspirational to hear that. It's always inspiring to hear somebody who's clean for that amount of time. Even after using for so many years. I was so sick I almost died.
Here. There you go. Okay.
It did.
And then we also have.
Okay.
Wow.
I know what she's feeling. I know what she felt. When you say you almost died, yeah, thank you. Yeah, when you say you almost died, I'm sure maybe you were talking about the withdrawal symptoms, which the only way I could describe it is it's indescribable. It's like having the worst flu you've ever had, but not being able to sleep. Tremors, body shakes. It's even difficult to talk about that part of it. It's but you got to remember how painful it is, because that is one thing that can keep you going, keep you staying clean, is remembering the pain you went through, not remembering the good times, whatever good times there were. So I thank you, Sula, right? Sula, thank you for
Sula, and Sula commented again, I was in the ICU for 2 weeks. Was that, if you don't mind me asking, was that because of withdrawal symptoms? That was to help you cope? You had to be in hospital, which is,
it could land you in the hospital.
Yeah.
Just due to the amount of pain you're in, not being able to sleep, which getting really deep into this. When I was in the county jail, I didn't sleep for probably about 2 or 3 weeks, maybe 45 minutes a night. They would give you like this Benadryl medication and put you to sleep. And I am not like a schizophrenic person. I don't hear it, but did have infection. Yeah, it's probably from injecting and everything else. But
Wow.
yeah, so that's a really dangerous thing. I luckily never. I knew people who endocarditis, who had blood infections from injecting. So thank God. A lot of people use religion, and with my belief system, it's very difficult for me to delve into the religious aspect of recovering. And they try to tell you that it's a spiritual thing, which I'm could be a spiritual being, but AA is very delved, and they say the word God a lot, and I know it's hard for people to get past that aspect of alcohol and Narcotics Anonymous, because it becomes like, I have a higher power, because they say that because a lot of addicts are self-centered individuals. So you figure if you have a higher power, you have somebody more powerful and greater than yourself that you could sort of like, I don't know how you put it, but somebody greater than yourself that you can kind of look to for guidance or whatever, and that you're not the master of the world. That's how I look at it. A lot of people, some people struggle with the religious aspect of like treatment and NA, because they do dig into that a lot, and that was one part of the whole trip that I didn't really. I had intrathecal pain pump. I'm not sure what that is, but it's.
Is that for opioids? I think I've heard of that before.
Pain pump. Oh, is that like maybe? Sulu, were you like? Did you suffer from like any chronic things that got you started on the opiates? Was it something that you were taking for pain originally?
Like, was this what got you?
Starting with prescription medications, because that could be maybe what she was saying. But yeah, I know many people that either went through a surgery or an injury, I play a lot of athletics, and actually a few of my friends actually got started from like injuries like torn ACLs, that type of thing. And like I say, you take an Oxycontin. They don't even know if they make Oxycontins anymore, but they were extremely potent opiate medication. Now you're giving this to a kid or an individual who's never really done any drug in their life, and they might have a reaction to it. They're like, wow, my leg feels better, but I also feel great. And then that's when the addictive mind can be, because fibromyalgia and arthritis, very painful. My father says arthritis, hip replacements. But someone like my father, he was able to take the things and just, once his pain went away, throw them away. That's why they say, you're born with the disease of addiction. It's kind of instilled inside you. And I didn't believe that for a very long time. But I believe it's true. But you got to unlock it. That's why it's dangerous for certain people to use psychotropic substances, because they can open up something inside them they didn't know that existed. And they could become, a habitual user. It's more of an obsession. It becomes like an obsession. That's how I looked at it. Because I was always obsessive about things. You learn an instrument. Like I used to practice like 12 hours a day. When I first started to feel like I was getting like good at my podcast or whatever, I wanted to do it like every day. I realized, it's better to do it like once a week. So like I was that type of person that would get like really hooked on something, even if it was a positive thing, and really put my all into it. So then when I became an addict, I put my all into that, and it was a total negative thing. But it became like an obsessive thing to constantly be in a medicated state. And if you were dealing with this chronic pain, because that's not really my story. I didn't really suffer from any kind of chronic pain like that. I may later on in life, but that wasn't really what got me started. But a lot of people it is, and I wish you the best for all that you went through, and I hope you stay clean. You still there? Oh, shit, hold on. I found that dieting help more than pills. I hate that happens.
There we go. And bye, Mateo. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, we're going to wrap up soon. Thank you. Love you.
Am I there?
Oh, yeah, you're frozen. Oh, there you go. You're back.
There you go. All right. Sorry. So, yeah. So we were talking about the addiction thing, right? I wish you the best, Sue. Thank you, Sue.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I apologize about that little connection issue. But, yeah, so hearing that really made me feel like somebody's listening, even if it's a few people that listening and that they can respond to it and talk about their own things. That really helps a lot. It makes you feel like someone's getting something out of our conversation. That's important.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, we are wrapping up here. We've already we talked for almost an hour. I feel like we can keep going
right by.
Yeah. I would love to have you back on again, and we could talk even more about this if you want. Pick up where we left off. Thank y'all for joining us. I am, if you don't already follow me on Twitter, I am at Liv Romano on Twitter. My Venmo is my Twitter. I'm sorry. You can watch it. We have someone who's on Twitch right now. You can go to my YouTube channel, which is Liv Romano. Here, I'll type it in. Go to my YouTube channel, Liv Romano, and you can watch this right now. We just had a really great conversation about mental health and the opioid epidemic. Please watch it. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Gentle Rambler. Please, where can we find you and follow you?
I really just do Twitter at Diblasio Robert on Twitter. My show is Gentle Rambler, presents Beneath the Surface on Spotify, Anchor.fm, Spotify / Gentle Rambler. You can see my writings on dangerousglobe.com. I'm actually going to be on another program later today called The Marine and the Hippie, but I don't think it's live, so that one will come out probably later on. I'll let you guys know. And my show will be recorded tomorrow afternoon. I'm going to have a young lady from Scotland who we're going to talk about the Kashmiri India crisis over there. something that I'm very interested in. So check that out as well. But thank you for having me, and I'm glad we were able to have our chat, and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Me too. Thank you so much. And I hope to have you back soon.
I hope maybe you could come on the Gentle Rambler.
Oh my God. I would love to. Please.
Yeah, sure
Thank
thing.
you.
All right.
So
All right,
thank you, Sula. Thank you so much. Much love, solidarity. Thank you.
Yes.
And we are closing it out. Bye, y'all.
All right.